Okay, so this is episode 15 of the 10-6 diaries. So we're into sort of a new, I guess like a new chapter for the series, because the goal was to hopefully run 10-6 this year, but injuries and stuff happened, so that didn't happen this year. But I'm confident that if I can execute how I did last year, if I can execute similar to that, I know that it should be possible, providing there's no sort of big injuries. And even if there is big injuries, I feel like from what I've learned this year, I can still sort of probably salvage something by being a bit smarter with the use of, I think a big thing that sort of prevented me from running faster this season was, I think it was sort of like a confidence thing, where I didn't really have the confidence nor the fitness. So I'd like built up a base of fitness, build up this confidence with all my off-season training, and then that kind of gets wiped off after 5 weeks of not really sprinting due to the injury. So I think if I would have changed one thing about what I did after the injury, it would have just been coming back maybe a little bit slower, doing more sort of GPP work. I sort of I was really, I guess, like impatient and wanted to rush the process of coming back. I thought I could like compete back into shape, but it turned out that that wasn't, or didn't really seem like it was going to be a viable thing to do. So I feel like that's the one thing I would have changed. But enough of that. I'm going to go over sort of what I've done sort of in the meantime up until the start of my off season. So this was sort of like I guess it was technically a 6 or 7 week break from sort of training specifically for sprinting anyway. I was still doing sort of some sort of sprinting, once a week with sled sprints. But for the first week after competing, I just took it off. I just took time to relax. I would walk my dog. I would take on like 2 walks a day. I climbed that tree that you saw at the start. I just sort of like, I was like walking my dog, and I got to this, like I usually stop at this little bridge with this tree, and I saw this tree, and I recognized like earlier in the year that it had these like vines growing up, and I was like, you know what, I think I could climb that. So I thought, there's no no danger of like, if I break an arm now or break a leg now, I'll be fine because my season's so far away, even though it would be like I guess like a season-ending injury for next year if that happened. But that was my sort of methodology behind like climbing that tree. It probably wasn't a good idea, but honestly it was just something that was really good fun, and I got like a really good like buzz and adrenaline rush. And then as well, I went on a nice little walk after I did these jumps here. I walked down this little sort of like trail. I think it was at like 8 o'clock at night. The sun was starting to set a little bit, and I had a shower underneath this like waterfall. I kind of like, there was no one around, so I just like, I took all my clothes off and just like showered, and it was like coastal, so there was like nothing for like miles, and like no one could see me. So I just like showered under this waterfall, like without any clothes on, like in like in the open. And it was like a really sort of, it was like really cold, but it was like a nice like experience. It's hard to kind of put sort of like an emotion on it. It was just sort of like it felt like a really good release and like a reset almost for what I would class as like a sort of bad, it's been sort of like a bad year in my eyes. Like I've learned a lot, there's lots I can take away from it, but I feel like I've just not had an amazing year, even with things that have happened like recently in life. Like it's just not been great. But I always feel like, sometimes in life you'll have like ups and downs, and I feel like sometimes you'll have like bad years, sometimes you'll have really good years. And I think it's important to have bad times, because obviously if you don't have bad times and everything's good, then it's like, I feel like it would make the things that are good in life a bit like you would appreciate it less, I guess, if it was always, if everything was always like going your way and going well. So I feel like it's important to have, bad times and good times, to balance out the highs, I guess. But yeah, so I went on this walk, and it just felt like a really good reset. And I would say it's honestly maybe like the happiest I've been this year was like on that walk. Like I just felt really sort of like, at one with myself, at one with nature. I walked like barefoot all the way there, all the way back, and it was just like a really nice day. It was really warm as well. I think it was like 24 degrees, and at this point it was like 8 at night, but it was still like 20 degrees, and I was able to walk like shirtless back to my car, and it was just like a really good day in general. And as I say, like a reset from sort of this season I had. Like, it wasn't, I suppose it's unfair to say that it was like a complete waste of time and a failure, because as I say, I have learned things from my experiences this year, but yeah, just not what I was hoping for. But as I say, that's not always, you're not always going to get what you're hoping for, and I think that's sometimes a good thing to kind of keep you humble and keep you, I guess, like grounded in a sense. But yeah, so after that week I had off, that week of like enlightenment and recovery, I got back into some rehab training. So I've been dealing with some right knee pain for like months. I'm talking like, I think it was December, start of December last year, that I started to get this knee pain, and it's only now, like currently today, it's not really giving me much bother. There's maybe like a slight bit of pain, but I would honestly say it's like a 2 out of 10 pain, and it can only really be felt if I'm like going into those like not even like deep ranges of motion, but it can only be felt if I'm like sort of like pulsing, like pulsing movements almost with the knee. Don't know if that makes sense. It sort of makes sense in my head, but that's only when the pain's felt. So it's like basically better. Like, it's not really sore when I do jumps, it's not sore when I like sprint or do anything like that, so that's quite nice. I feel like it's probably going to be quite important to just try and get the body in sort of like a state, not necessarily like fully pain-free. I feel like if you're trying to attain any level of like high performance in basically any sport, there's always probably going to be something that's going to be sore, and you're just going to have to sort of accept that almost. But to try and get the body as pain-free as possible throughout all the all your joints, your tendons, your ligaments, muscles, is kind of like the goal, I think, with training as well. I feel like if you're sort of healthy in a sort of like holistic way, then you're just going to probably perform better. You're going to be mentally in a better state. So I think it's just important to try and sort out little niggles where you can, and take extra rest days where you can as well. Sometimes I think it is definitely important to do that. So that's what we were doing with this training cycle here. It was supposed to be a 4-week training cycle, and my knees definitely felt like the pain was like coming down like week to week. I could notice like a difference in the knee pain, and it was getting it was just less sore. So that like my coach uses a pain scale of like 1 to 10, so I'd say I've kept it at about a 3 out of 10 pain all year, and it was starting to get down to sort of like like a 2, then to maybe like a 1 out of 10, like no pain. And then I ended up slightly flaring it up, I think on week 2 or week 3 of the training cycle. I just tried to do too much too soon, and it just like flared it up slightly, and I knew that if I just continued on with the training that I was doing, that it's just gonna again like compound, and it's gonna become a bigger issue than it has to be. So I had to make the decision to like not max out, even though my power clean and my clean pulls and like Olympic lifting in general was just going like amazingly well in this training cycle. Like, I just started to take creatine as well, so I felt like I was feeling the effects, and I guess that's a story for maybe another time. Well, actually, no, I suppose I can go into it now. I've got like plenty of time. I think there's still another few minutes left to discuss sort of like what I've been doing, but this is like a big thing. So I took creatine for the first time. So I thought I was taking 3-gram pills of creatine. Turns out I was taking like 1-gram pills, and I was just taking one of these a day, because I thought if I just take like one like 3-gram dose a day, that's going to be enough where I'm going to get the effects of it, but I'm not going to possibly get as much water retention as I would if I take 5 grams a day. And I think 3 to 5 is like the recommendation, so that was my sort of methodology behind it. And it turned out I was taking 1 gram a day, and I swear the first few days I sort of like placeboed myself, because I really felt like I was getting a big effect from taking this like creatine dose, even though it was just 1 gram a day, and I was like placeboing myself. But I really felt like all these strength gains that I was seeing in the Olympic lifts was sort of like a direct correlation was from the creatine supplementation. And it was only when my friend that had bought these same pills, because he like crunched the numbers and he worked out, and he was like, it's like so much cheaper to take these pills compared to like buying like the bags where you get the scoops. he bought like 10 like supplement tubs. I don't know if tubs is the right word, but he bought like 10 supplement like boxes of these pills, and he was like, he like read it and it was like 1 gram per pill, and then he like told me, and I'd been doing it for like 2.5 weeks at this point, and I was like dumbfounded because I really felt like I was feeling the results. But I guess that's the first time I've been sort of placeboed. Maybe it's not the first time I've been placeboed, but the first time I've sort of realised it. So I've sort of experienced the placebo effect now, you know, as like as an athlete, I guess, as an individual, which is kind of cool, I guess, because I've seen it a lot in studies that I've like looked up for my, you know, university. So that's like another big thing I guess I could go over, is that I've now sort of graduated uni, so I'm now no longer at uni. I've got a lot more free time. I'm taking a year out, and the plan is to then try and get a sports scholarship to do my masters, so that I can, you know, save a bit of money and get like a master's degree at the same time. So I'm taking a year out, try and run as fast as I can to hopefully, you know, get a sports scholarship, get some money knocked off the cost of the degree, I guess. So that's like the plan, and that's why I'm sort of like really focusing in on the training. But yeah, it was just annoying to flare my knee up. It was because I did, you know, 2 jump sessions. I essentially sort of did 2 jump sessions in one day over the course of like an hour and a half, or not even, like over the course of like half an hour. Like I did 1 jump session, then I had like 20 minutes to half an hour's rest, and then I did another one, and it flared the knee pain up, so I had to kind of go back to square one. And I did sort of this training cycle for 2 weeks, and my knee pain felt like it was improving on this cycle because I then subbed out the jump days for just like drop jumps, and that's like a bit more forgiving on the knees. But during this training cycle, like my back just got like really sore from, I guess it was just like a lot of flexion that it was going into, like on the hip thrusts. I feel like I've never been great at doing hip thrusts because I don't really do them often. And even then I feel like I always am sort of in that flexion position when I'm, you know, lifting it off the ground, but I don't really know how to fix that because I feel like I don't care enough about hip thrusts to try and like really figure out how I should do them right. I just sort of do them and assume that they're probably like right enough. But I think that was a problem, so I was getting flexion in that, and then I was doing Romanian deadlifts like straight after. And I wasn't necessarily going into flexion in the first session, but then I was wanting to try and progress it up to see how strong I could get with Romanian deadlifts, and then the problem arose that my back just isn't strong enough. I'm just not built different enough, and the Romanian deadlifts seem to like fry my back. And yeah, a combination of that just really made my back quite sore for sort of a week or two. Like it wasn't anything like a disc bulge, it's just sort of like general back fatigue from essentially just bad lifting form. So that's like one thing, like you shouldn't be going away from the gym with like, you know, a really fatigued lower back. Like fair enough if your like quads or calves are maybe sore from doing calf raises, doing squats, lunges, your glutes are sore, but like your lower back, you shouldn't really feel like too much stiffness in it. Maybe the first time when you're like first doing, say, deadlifts in a training cycle, it might feel a little tight for the first week, but that should sort of dissipate. But if it doesn't dissipate, then it's probably like a form issue. So you can see here, like my back's starting to go into a little bit of flexion. I would say there is a range with flexion where your back can go into flexion and it's not going to be too much of an issue, but it does then get to a point where, like at that point there, you can see my form's breaking down quite a bit, and I'd say that's where it's not really alright, and that's where you could run into issues. But yeah, I did have an experience when I was younger, when I first started in the gym, where my back, like, it like popped almost. This was when I was like maxing out on deadlifts every week with my friends in the gym. This was like within the first month or so, I was trying to pull what I thought was like 120 at the time. Realistically, it was probably like 110 because it wasn't really like calibrated weights, and it was like this like school gym with this like rubbish bar. But yeah, I felt this like pop in my back, and ever since then I've been super cautious with like lifting form, and I think it was definitely a lesson that's like served me well to this point in my career. But yeah, that's been sort of, you know, the first, I guess like early off season like rehab plan. That's like everything. This is like everything I've done up until then. Next week, or I'll maybe upload like later in this week, and I'll try and catch up with the uploads, but I'll probably do like a week of, you know, the first week of off season, week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, etc, etc. I'll maybe do like each week, and I'll like upload, I guess, like this video format. I did try the like Sam Sulek format, but I'm not really a fan. I feel like it's not that I'm not a fan, I just don't want to really copy, you know, I don't want to bite his flow, even though I've done those kind of videos in the past. When I did like the sub 11 series, I did that sort of format for it, I guess, to start, but I quite like this format of just like talking over the top. So I guess, you know, that's really it for the video. So I will see you in week 1 of the off-season plan. This has just been, you know, my rehab stuff that I did to get the knees right, to get the body feeling a bit better, and now we're going to build that capacity up with the off-season training. So yeah, that is it. I will finish it up because we're almost at 16 minutes, and that is like way too long.